Core strength is something that has become a bit of a buzzword in the fitness industry, but it's talked about a lot in riding as well. So how important is it for us as riders to be really strong in our core, and how much do we need to really hold and really keep that strong core when we're actually riding? This is what we're going to be talking about in today's video. I'm Callie, and you're watching this at CRK Training. This is our weekly show where I answer questions and talk about all kinds of topics related to riding, training, and horse care. As we talk about this idea of core strength, I think it's first important to understand the true definition of core. Most people think of core as being your abs, like the muscles that you can see if you're at the beach and you have a flat stomach. But the core is actually much beyond just the outer abdominal muscles. Our core is actually our whole trunk. So it includes the innermost stabilizing muscles, it includes our big back muscles, it also includes all of those deep muscles as well as the external abdominals. We have to recognize that our whole body and our muscles are a system. Muscles work together in a symphony of movement, and our whole body is connected by the fascia system. And this is a system of connective tissue that kind of looks like spider webs that goes across our body. It's the reason why if you have an injury someplace, or maybe you have limited mobility in one area, you can actually feel the tightness or even the pain in other areas of your body, because our body is just so connected. There was a really interesting study done where they actually found that individuals that had poor trunk flexibility, in simple tests just seeing basically how much they could stretch forward, they noticed that there was a correlation between the individuals that were essentially less flexible and had that poorer flexibility with the stiffening of their arteries. So that outward expression of being stiff was also correlated to what was happening deep inside the body. Good movement and good riding come from coordinated body function. And I'll explain why this is so important in just a moment. But first, I want to take a look at some of the effects that can come from when we overbrace our core. So what's being taught in a lot of fitness circles and also in some riding is the idea that we have to stay really tight and strong through our core in order to have good posture and to be able to ride well. So it's taught to make the stomach really tight, to pull the belly button back in towards the spine, to lift up with the pelvic floor, and to maintain that as much as possible throughout our riding. But here's 3 problems that can come from overbracing. The first is that when we overbrace through our core, it limits correct breathing. So when we're breathing well, when we're breathing in a state of calm, what happens is the diaphragm extends down. That helps to fill up the lungs and to bring all the air into the lungs. As the diaphragm extends down, the organs naturally move down and the pelvic floor moves down. That happens on the inhale, and then as we exhale, the pelvic floor comes up, the organs move up slightly, the diaphragm lifts, and the air is expelled. This keeps natural movement, it keeps our natural cycle of breath, and it also allows us to move freely because nothing's being restricted. And that's exactly what the second piece is. When we overbrace our core and we keep everything tight, not only are we limiting the breathing, but as a function of this, we also make it more difficult for us to move well, especially when we're riding and we have to be able to adapt to and go with the movement of the horse. So the more that we keep everything really tight, the more that we start to restrict the movement in our hips, the more our shoulders might get tight, our hands might get tighter, because remember, the body is a whole system. When we tighten in one area, other areas are going to tighten as well. So when we start to restrict movement, it becomes harder to stay in balance, to coordinate, and be able to move fluidly. The other thing that happens that is kind of a result of both of these is that over-tightening the core can actually affect our emotion. And the reason is when we stay really tight and we aren't able to breathe in this healthy way, we can start to lose the state of calm. It becomes easier to get sucked into anxiety or to start to feel frustrated because of the restriction that we've created from being really tight. So here's the deal. Our core isn't always going to be tight and engaged, but it's not always going to be soft either. We need to be able to move, we need to be able to stabilize, and we need to be able to breathe freely. From here, we can understand that nuance, that a strong core is really important as riders, but a strong core comes from regular, good quality, healthy movement. It doesn't come from just trying to hold ourselves and be braced all the time. What we really need to find is that coordinated function, where we're able to simply move well, where we're able to use strength when we need it, but also be soft when we don't need that strength. Think of an example of two different riders. There may be someone that you've seen ride that they ride well, but they always look a little bit stiff. They never quite have that easy, effortless, looking like they're just one with the horse. And compare that to a good child rider. A lot of times when children ride, they look carefree, they look perfectly balanced, they're just moving with the horse, and they're not thinking about keeping their core tight. But they're riding with good function. Sometimes they're going to tighten up and be strong, and other times they're going to be soft. So what's important to understand is this coordinated movement of our body is actually more important than simply having strength. A practice that I love for developing more coordination through our body and more awareness of how we're moving is the practice of yoga. I find that yoga really helps to understand when we need to be strong and also when we can be soft. So we have a new series coming up. We have a new full class that's going to be starting, but we also have a free series of short 10-minute yoga classes that's going to be starting in just a few weeks. And you can sign up right now to make sure that you join in on these free series. So the link is down below. I'd love to have you join us in this new Yoga for Riders series taught by a wonderful yoga instructor and a good friend of mine, Heidi Blackman.